Hello, my name is Chasity Crabb. I'm the literacy consultant here at the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative. I'm going to discuss reading comprehension strategies that you can use for students with disabilities. So your target for today is after you complete the module, you'll be able to use the 7 thinking strategies to support student comprehension within the Kentucky academic standards. Let's look at this reading standard. It says, by the end of the year, flexibly use a variety of comprehension strategies such as questioning, monitoring, visualizing, inferencing, summarizing, synthesizing, using prior knowledge, and determining importance to read, comprehend, analyze, grade level appropriate, complex literary text independently and proficiently. This is standard 10 for each grade level. It is also the same in both literature and informational text. Note the strategies in the parentheses of this standard. The questioning, monitoring, visualizing, inferencing, summarizing, synthesizing, using prior knowledge, and determining importance. And this will lead us into our next slide. Based on research by Susan Zimmerman and Chris Hutchins, these thinking strategies have been identified as the 7 keys to comprehension. They are using background knowledge, creating sensory images, questioning, determining importance, making inferences, monitoring for meaning, and synthesizing. These are the same as the ones listed in our reading standard. We're going to break down each thinking strategy, discuss what each one looks like, and also talk about some specially designed instruction that you can use to help students with disabilities develop these comprehension strategies and ultimately comprehend text at a higher level. The first one is schema, activating, utilizing, and building background or prior knowledge. This strategy involves students making connections between what they already know to new information. So what would that look like? Well, if a student was able to utilize their background knowledge, they would be able to activate their prior knowledge before, during, and after reading. They would be able to take that and clarify their new learning by deleting inaccurate schema. So they kind of learn something new and think, oh, what I thought to be true wasn't. They also can relate text to their world knowledge, to other text, and to their personal experiences. They can activate their knowledge of authors, genre, and text structure to build knowledge necessary to understand. So, for example, like the genre of fantasy has a lot of, places that are made up. Then they can use that for other stories in the same area. And an example would be if you had a story about a family vacation at a beach. Students who've been to a beach or have read other texts about beaches, they could use that information for this new story that they're getting ready to read for a family vacation at a beach. They would already know that what the setting would look like and what the temperature would be like and things like that. So let's talk about some strategies that you can use that would help your students. So the first one that I have here is the KWL strategy, and how you would set this up would be on chart paper, and you would divide it into, label it K, W, and L. Under the K, you would list what you would know. In the second one, you would tell what you would want to know, and then at the end, you tell what you learned. Another one, it's set up the same way, but this is called the learn strategy. You would list what you know, explore what you would want to know, access information, reflect on what you're learning, and then at the end you would make the connections. These are just a couple of ideas. And also what I want to mention about these SDI strategies is that these are not exclusive. There are other strategies that you can use. I just want to kind of give you a couple examples. And also the KWL and the Learn strategy, if I do not have them listed under another thinking strategy, then that doesn't mean you can't use it. I just didn't want to kind of repeat it. So you can use these strategies interchangeably, and also if you wanted to, and there's other ones that could be used that's not listed. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind. And some guiding questions that you may be able to use to help your students to get them started in their thinking process is, as you're reading, you can say things like, what does this remind you of? Or what can you connect this to? How is this like something? So those are just some things, because sometimes the students, they do not even know how to start to think. So maybe if you can use some of those guiding questions, that can help them start thinking a little bit, and can get that going for them. The next one is visualizing. It involves creating sensory images, or referred to as brain TV. This strategy stimulates students to create mental images to better understand. So what does that look like? Well, they're able to immerse themselves in rich detail as they read. They can use their senses, your 5 senses, to create these images and personalize them. And they can also revise them as they read the story and get a better understanding of the text, and the picture that they had at the beginning could change after they get new information. And then also at the end, they would be able to revise their picture, their mental picture, after they've listened to the other students talk about what it looked like to them. So that is kind of interesting. So some strategies that you can use for students to help them is give them instruction on visual imagery, instruction on using visual prompts, and modeling through the Think Aloud strategy. The Think Aloud strategy, I think, is a good one here, because as you're reading through, you talk, how your thinking would be on how you would develop the picture in your mind, and you just do that out loud, and then that gives them an example of how they could go through and do that and develop their own pictures. And the visual prompts is also a big one. Teach them to look at those, how to use those, and that would definitely help them in order to form their own pictures of things. So for example, like in Little Women, the author describes the setting where a family was staying as a poor, bare, miserable room it was, with broken windows, no fire, ragged bedclothes, a sick mother, wailing baby, and a group of pale, hungry children cuddled together under one old quilt trying to keep warm. So as you're reading that, then you just talk about how you can visualize what that room would look like and what that family would look like. You're painting that picture in your head, and you can do your Think Aloud strategy. You can talk it through and explain to your kids what that would look like. Some questions that may help them also to get them going is, when you read that, what did you see, hear, smell, feel, or taste? Just give them time to answer those questions. So what words led you to that image? What made you come up with that picture? And how does that image help you understand the text better? So that may help them, again, try to get their thinking going, because they need some prompts on how to get started in their line of thinking sometimes. Now moving on to asking questions. With this strategy, you're going to get kids to ask questions of themselves and of text or content before, during, and after learning. So also they can ask questions for different purposes, making predictions, and also wondering about why the author made choices the way that he did. Like, for example, they could say, why did the author have that character react to that situation in that way? And also, while they're reading, be able to pursue answers to their own questions that will increase their overall understanding. So how do you get your kids to be able to do that? Well, let's look at our strategies. You can do some explicit instruction on how to use graphic organizers. Graphic organizers are very helpful for kids because it provides that visual cue for them. If they know how to use it, they gotta know how to use it first. But this is a very useful tool. Also, some integrated use of visual skills like scanning for information, charts, maps, and graphs. Sometimes they don't even pay attention to those things, but if we could teach them to look at them and just to kind of scan for information instead of reading it word for word, they may be able to pick up on some things. And then also the QAR strategy, question, answer, and response. It's set up kind of like the KWL strategy, but this is really more to just it helps them organize their thinking into questions and answers, and then the responses that they may have. So maybe some guiding questions that you could do for them as they're reading would be things like, what are you wondering? Or what questions do you have? In what ways will those questions help you understand this? And what are you more curious about? Our next strategy is determining importance. Thinkers who are able to distinguish important and less important information based on their purpose. They get to that higher level of understanding. And be able to do that, they can identify key ideas, themes, and elements as they read. They're able to distinguish the important and unimportant information based on their purpose of reading. They can also use text structures and word cues from the author. They're able to determine what's important enough to keep in long-term memory and what they're going to retell or summarize, and the use of text structures and text features. So some strategies that you can use to help with our kids is be able to pre-teach those concepts and vocabulary, because if there's words in that text that they don't even know what it means, then they can't determine if that's important or not if they don't even know what it is. And also some mnemonic strategies. These are strategies that will help them develop memory that they can use, to recall information. And explicit instruction in how to use graphic organizers. Again, that's a big one, that just a good visual cue for them. And then instruction on the advanced organizer. So you can start out simple and then go down to the more advanced one to be able to pull out the details and the important piece of the story. And determine what's essential and not essential in a story. Some guiding questions that you can use maybe to help the kids would be, what are some main ideas, or what are the main ideas in this story? How does the author show us what he thinks is important? What are some things that he does in that story? And what does the author want us to learn? As you think about that, what's he wanting us to get from this text? So those may be some things that will help them get started with their learning, to process about some things that they can focus on until get out some of those essential pieces. Next, we have drawing inferences. Students merge what they know with new information to arrive at conclusions, make predictions, or come up with big ideas. So this one is a little bit more difficult for students sometimes because it's not explicitly stated in the text. They have to come up with their answer it's not written down for them. So if they were able to draw inferences, they're able to draw conclusions about their reading by connecting the text with their schema. They're able to make, confirm, and revise reasonable predictions. And at this one, it would be important to let the kids know that there's more than one right answer, that just because their answer is different from their friends, then that doesn't make their answer wrong. But it is important for them to know that they have to be able to support their answer from evidence from the text. So anything that would be reasonable would be acceptable. They would know when and how to infer answers to unanswered questions, and then extend that comprehension beyond the literal understanding of that printed page. Some strategies that you can use for your students is pre-teaching that concept and vocabulary. Again, they need to know what those words mean so that they're able to have information to determine what's important and to be able to have evidence and make their predictions. And instruction and graphic organizers is another big one for them. Some questions that you could guide them in order to get their thinking wheels turning would be, what are you thinking as you read this text? And what conclusions can you draw after you read this text? Another strategy is monitoring for meaning. With this strategy, thinkers are aware of their thinking. They recognize when they understand text and when they don't. They can identify when and why the meaning of the text is clear. They can decide if the confusion is critical to the overall understanding and explore a variety of ways to remedy confusion. So if there's like just one small part of the text that they don't really understand, they would be able to decide, well, if I don't know this, am I still going to get the total understanding of what the author is wanting me to do? So they can decide if it's important or not, and if it's not, they don't even have to worry about trying to figure that small piece out. But our kids cannot sometimes decide if that's critical or not. So some ways that we can help them would be the integrated use of visual cues, scanning for that information, reading charts, the graphs, the bold print, if they have some little footnotes on the side. Also, the QAR and the KWL strategy is good for this one. It helps get their thinking organized, and it helps them be able to make things less confusing. Some questions that you can get some guiding questions for them would be, what makes sense? What's confusing? And where are you clueless when you read this text? The last strategy is synthesizing. This refers to students noticing how their understanding evolves and changes. So what does that look like? Well, they can continually monitor overall meaning, important concepts and themes while they read. They recognize ways in which text elements fit together to create that larger meaning, and then they can create new and personal meaning as well. So again, our strategies that we can use for our kids would be pre-teaching concepts and vocabulary. You can use the instruction on using that LEARN strategy that I talked about earlier. Modeling is a big one for kids. That is very helpful for kids if you model for them, show them exactly what it would look like if it was done correctly. And also explicit instruction in how to use those graphic organizers. Some guiding questions that will help those kids while they're reading would be to ask them, now what are you thinking? And what's changed about your ideas, or what's changed about your thinking after you've read this text? I want to share 2 resources that I feel like every special education teacher needs on their desk. I wanted to let you know what they look like and just kind of introduce them to you if you're not aware of them, so that to help you with your development of your IEPs and your lessons as well. The first one is the IEP and the Lesson Plan Development Handbook. This is where you can find your specially designed instruction strategies, and for every content and section that you would need. The strategies that we talked about today, this is where it comes from. So I highly recommend that. The other one is the guidance document for your IEP development. This is an awesome resource as well because it takes you through every step of the IEP. It gives an explanation of what that section is, what needs to go in there, and also why. So it gives you an understanding of being like, oh, okay, I get it. I have links for you on here that will take you straight to it. You can, for your preference, if you want to print them out or, download it to your desktop, either, whatever. Of course, I like the hard copy because I can mark it and highlight and things like that. But I just wanted you guys to be aware of these two resources that I feel like will help make your job a lot easier, and it will also give you a better understanding of the process, and also help with your lessons and also development of your IEPs. This slide right here has the handout that I also used today. You have the thinking strategies listed on it all together, has the definition, has teacher language, and these are the guiding questions that I talked about earlier. It's all together there for you on one sheet. You can use it as a reference. And then the last column is the student's thinking voice. It has some things that the students may be thinking, and that may also guide them, or also maybe guide you, and to come up with some more questions to help your students with those strategies. Here are the resources that I have used today, as well as links to help you get to those resources easily. The first two resources I have listed are books that has the research behind these thinking strategies. They're very good resources. If you can get access to those, it would be wonderful. The other ones, there's a couple articles, a couple publications that have the thinking strategies that give you a little bit more information about those if you want them. And then the bottom two are the ones I was telling you about for the IEP guidance document and the IEP and lesson plan development handbook, that will take you straight to it, and you can be able to have those as well. This concludes our module for today. I hope that you have been able to take some things away and help with your professional learning, things that you can use in your classroom, along with your help and develop your IEPs. But please, if you have any questions or need some clarifications or need assistance in any way, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I will be happy to help you any way that I can. Thank you for your time, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.